President Obama made it clear he will go around Congress to get things done when he deems it necessary, making unilateral changes to Obamacare and immigration law, among other things. Well, Republican Senator Mike Lee is among the growing chorus saying enough is enough. Republican or Democrat, he says there is a limit to presidential power, and it's written in the Constitution. I caught up with Senator Lee and asked him about his concerns and about how some lawmakers say that this is nothing more than outright abuse of executive power.
Well, this is really an issue that's not either Republican or Democratic. It's not liberal or conservative. It is simply an American concern. It's a concern our founding fathers had. And that's why they separated out the powers of government. That's why they put the lawmaking power here in Congress and they put the executive power with the president. What we've had from this president is a lot of lawmaking without authorization by Congress, and that's a problem.
There are those who will say, constitutional scholars, presidents have some leeway. They have the power to modify their legislation so it works as it was intended. Is that what's happening here or not?
No, they're not simply exercising discretion within what the law authorizes, because in some instances, let's take, for example, the employer mandate of the Affordable Care Act. That prescribes a date on which the employer mandate is supposed to kick in, when it's supposed to become effective. So they say date X. The president has said, no, not date X plus 2 years, or whatever it is he happens to be saying at the moment. That's directly contrary to what the law says. It's authority that the Congress has never delegated to the president. That's unconstitutional, and it's a problem. It's an institutional problem that members of Congress in both parties really ought to be concerned about.
So what can you do about it?
Okay, so there are a few things we can do about it. One thing we can do is to withhold funding for that program in which the president has overreached. Another thing that Congress can do is to require the administration to issue a report. We don't have legislation doing this just yet, but we're working on it. There's currently in existing law a requirement for the Attorney General to do that when the Attorney General decides not to enforce a law because he thinks it's unconstitutional. Well, the same rule ought to exist when they decide that even though it might not be unconstitutional, they just want to change it for policy reasons. That's what we need to require.
Those things sound a little bit more longer term. Would they require a signature from the president or some cooperation at some point?
Yes, they would require a signature from the president, which is yet another hurdle. And so that's yet another reason why we've got to stay focused on them and why we need to continue to educate voters on the dangers of allowing a president to do this. It's also another reason why I think Congress needs to be more aggressive about withholding funds from a program in which the president is overreaching. Because very often in instances like these, and the suspension of the employer mandate is a good example, for a lot of reasons, it's very, very difficult to get a decision like that reviewed in court. And these other solutions that I've been talking about take a lot of time. The spending power is the one key ingredient in all of this, the one tool that Congress holds. And if we'd be more aggressive about that, I think we could stop the president.
Will any Democrats get on board with you about this? Because the inhabitant at the White House changes every 4 or 8 years.
Yes, and that is my great fear. My great fear is that this will now be the new normal. And this will bother me every bit as much if it comes from a Republican president down the road as when it comes from a Democratic president. So that's why I've been trying to share this idea with my Democratic colleagues. We have an institutional reason, separate and apart from our oath to the Constitution, we've got an institutional reason to be concerned about this, and we can't let it continue to happen, because it will continue to happen if we simply ignore it. You take, for example, what the president did with his unconstitutional recess appointments in January of 2012. He did that. At the time, several of my Democratic colleagues approached me in private and said, look, I agree with the fact that you're speaking out on this. I agree with the fact that what he did was not right. I don't feel like I'm in a good position to be able to criticize the president from my own party, but I'm proud of you for doing this. We need more of them to be able to come out in the open, because this is not a partisan issue. This is a constitutional issue.
All right, well, you